Hey everybody, it's the 13th of March, 2025. This is the third meeting of, I don't know if we're calling this a Gimbalabs Tech Stand-up or Dev Stand-up, but the idea is that we're starting this new space where we can do a little bit of what we've done in previous years at live coding sessions. So if people have questions and want to get help on anything they're working on, we can do that. But we're also taking a little bit of elements of playground, where people who have been working on something can come and give demos. Typically, if you're working on a tight development team, you do stand-ups frequently, and it gives everybody a chance to share what they're working on, what they're doing next, and what they are blocked by. We're going to save that version of a stand-up for specific projects. This will be more of like a high level meeting where anybody's going to be invited at the start of each meeting to add items to the agenda. And I'll show you what that looks like. I'm going to open up Notion again. And this is where we left off in the open spaces meeting. And if there's time, I have a little demo that I'd like to give. And I'm playing with this idea of a request for proposals. So this might be a space to talk about that. But where would this go? If I want to talk about this during today's tech stand-up, I'm going to navigate to the home page, Gimbalabs HQ, and then I'm going to click on Start Here. And when I do, I can see at the bottom of the page, we have this new document, Dev Standup, March 2025. And these are some items that we added to the running agenda last week. So you can see the date where they were added. And then we only got to two of them. We did a really nice deep dive into how Aiken works, um, generating our Plutus scripts so we can use them. And we have three more agenda items. So just running through these really quickly, Martin, is this still something you want to touch on?
Yeah, I think it's interesting.
So let's put that first today. Nelson, fun project idea. Is that still valid?
Yeah, I can throw a couple of words on that. Yeah, sure.
Okay. And Mix, do you still want to talk about Handshake?
Well, actually, we had an obstacle. We kind of found a solution for that. So I think we can just leave it for now. Once we have the code base, an idea and something to showcase and getting the opinion. But yeah, that's something. And actually, something regards to the proposal Sebastian made, we will need, front-end developer and developments for Handshake as well, which in its time we'll talk about it.
Great. So maybe we hold off on that one for today, but you're in the background thinking about this and how to bring it to the
Yeah.
broader developer community here. That's great. Okay. What else? So I shared something. I have a demo of Vibe Check Gov app and request for proposals. Are there any other items that people want to bring? This can be a question about something you're working on. It can be a demo of something that you want to share with the crew. Any other items that we should add to the agenda? And if you can either
I
unmute, yep.
I have one. It's just like a basic front end for deploying the pellets because there are about 150 UTXOs that we have to put in. So we had to create a small front end for that. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Okay. How to handle UTXOs in front end deployment. Is that an accurate definition here?
Yes, yes, that makes sense.
Let's do that. Okay. And we'll hope to get to these today. So here's an agenda forming. Anything else to add to the agenda? You can unmute like Harsha did. Or if you don't want to speak, you could just throw something in the chat.
Yeah, I would have loved to show the mesh deploying Asteria, the apply parameter, and all of the things I've done iteration Asteria, but yeah, it's last. I like the way the agenda is the agenda is at the bottom because I'm not really sure time my parameters for that today. And so yeah, and the environment I think there might be a lot of background noises. So yeah, but if there is time, we can dive into it.
Perfect. So yeah, if we go through things in this order, we'll certainly start with these two, and then as time allows, we'll do vibe check, Asteria, UTXOs, and we'll look at mesh deployment environment. All right, that's action packed. We probably won't cover everything today, but this is how it'll work, right? We'll always have a running agenda of next items. We can slide mix right down here, the handshake stuff for later. And there we go. There's our agenda for today. So without further ado, let's jump right in. I'm going to stop sharing screen, hand it off to Martin for a demo of how to start and add users via dGraph for Dandelion-lite. Hey, man.
Hey, let's try and share my screen. Does that work?
Yeah, we got it.
Okay, well, I'm working on the Dandelion governance side. And the idea is to automatically query if nodes are online. There are several people are already listed here. And yeah, every time you get queried, you get a green block. Well, this is not working at the moment. And I'm working on that now. And I'm using dGraph as a backend. And let me make this a little bigger. This is a Git repository, DandoDAO, and it's in my M2 Tech GitHub, so you can try it out if you want to play with dGraph. I decided to use dGraph because I'm interested in creating maybe a combination of a query engine with Dingo, which is the Go node, and dGraph to see if that is a possibility. So this for me is like a trial location to see in a simple way, because this is not a really complex project or a complex structure, to see yeah, what dGraph provides in functionality. So I have this, if you look at my, is this too small? It's feed side, and if you do npm run, this is just a small overview of what is provided. Here's the functions to run the main system, and I'm using these commands to. It should be that you can easily start it yourself. So, yeah, if it doesn't, please let me know. So npm run dev should bring up the site, but it also brings up the backend. So you have now this localhost. And this should give you a working website. So this brings up, this Docker brings up the playground, GraphQL, GraphEQL playground. Ratel is like, it's the playground only for DQL, because dGraph uses a superset of functionality. So GraphQL is implemented in DQL in dGraph. And well, because it's distributed, dGraph has alpha nodes. So that's for replication, and a 0 node, which is the master. So you always need at least a 0 and an alpha, but you can have multiple alphas, but that's not what you want to do in development environment, because it's not necessary. So if you have done that, you have an empty dGraph GraphQL. So you need to always, if you start first, to npm run a schema. And that will install your schema for you. So a schema is like the structure. So if you think of PostgreSQL, it's like all your database tables. You have also a schema there. In dGraph, it's a little different. And the schema gets loaded from this location, database folder. And at the moment, my schema looks like this. So I have Dandelion node operators, so DNOs, and they have a certain properties, and it has services. And a service can be a number of, DNO can have a number of services. And also, I'm interested in what URL that service is at. And then I want to fill in the uptimes, and that can be in a month or in a day. And the days is here a string. But the nice thing about dGraph is, if you look in the playground now, this is the GraphQL playground, and it's automatically also pointing to where the alpha node is. And here you can play with the system, and you don't need to create resolvers. So that's what dGraph does for you, which in GraphQL can be a little complicated. And so you get an automatic, if you saw just I had DNO as a type, I can do query, and you have automatically filters for them. So yeah, if you want to change the schema, there's this, you have to do some stuff to delete the database and start over. So I have a convenience function or script where you cycle the dev schema. You remove all the database data, and then it installs the schema again with your changes. But schema is empty. It automatically also waits until the server is running again, dGraph server, and then your schema is installed, and then you could do that again, and then you have a new website. Yeah, I'm using a simple query. Maybe that's the last thing I'll do. There's a lot more to it, maybe, but if I go to page settings, here I save a setting. I have a convenience function for handling a query. All you need to do is create a query, and yeah, this can be a mutation, and you can add some fields into it. So you pass this string, which is what we just saw in the playground. You start assembling your queries, and then you only have to put in those variables. So yeah, this is where you play around. I was changing this, so you see it already gives you some hints that this is wrong because I changed my schema. So you have to delete this one, and then it's happy. So it gives you a query. In this case, it returns no data. That's it, I think.
It looks really good. And the tech overview is amazing. Does anybody have any questions about the tech Martin's sharing here? Because for me, part of what's really exciting about this, it goes beyond the tech. It's just the problem you're solving, right? You're building distributed infrastructure, and you want to use community funding, for example, from Catalyst to distribute that to people who are running infrastructure. And I just think that pattern, that first thing you showed us, right? That how it pings everybody's query tip on a monthly basis. And if yours is running, you light up green and you're automating everything, right? So eventually people will be paid automatically. That's amazing, and it seems to me like a reusable pattern.
Yeah, it's like it also meant to be like an example or the next example in yeah, how you build a game changer website or game changer DAO, and how that works with a scripting wallet.
Would you mind just going back to the front end, please, Martin? Your screen.
Sure. And
If you wouldn't mind just talking through what's happening here.
I got very inspired, which I call copying from Catalyst, and I'm using this as a template. So I want to every Friday I have like a governance meeting for Dandelion, and I discuss then the progress of our project. We just recently concluded milestone 1. But this was already completed. And we are now working on milestone 2. And in milestone 2, we need to onboard like 6 DNOs. So we have now 3. Well, I'm working with Quasar on setting up 3, but we have already, I think, 2 extra. Like Roberto is already running this one. Mine is running also fine. So yeah, every milestone, and in education and maintenance, we have to have some governance proposals. So this work will look completely different. But here we have to, for 1 month at least, we have to have 6 nodes running. So the target is to use that, to do that. But yeah, I cannot show you exactly how it works because it's all, I've been working on the schema, so it's all fallen apart. But normally you get the month, and then when you have no data, it's white. If you have a failure that day, you get a gray block. And if you got a pass, you get a green block. But in this case, there's only green blocks. So say you would have a perfect month, you would have all green.
Okay. All right. Yeah, thanks.
And then there will be a button here, which will construct a game changer transaction. And if you pass, like say 80% is green, you have a good month, you will be included in this transaction. So only I would have to build a JSON structure for this.
Right. Okay.
I want to connect this all to addresses. So if you look at settings here, this is my settings. So you can add a mainnet wallet. So, but I'm currently, because it's all in beta, I'm hooking this all up to a pre-production address. But payouts will also happen on mainnet. So every DNO, let me make this a little bit bigger, can add his information, and then yeah, the querying will happen here for pre-production and here for mainnet.
Okay. Oh, thanks for that. Yeah, I really like it. It's cool. A cool little tool.
Absolutely.
So if somebody shows up for the weekly governance meeting and wants a deeper dive into the tech you're using here, is that something you would be willing to do?
Yeah, of course.
Beauty.
Yeah, I stumbled into it. I don't know if it was a game changer or it's a super friendly group. Hugh is there, Adriana's there, Martin's there, and it's just they're good. It's got that vibe. So I encourage you if you're curious. It's a little out of my pay grade. I'm it's really actually cool to get James the context. Like James saying, it's like, oh wow, like stating it from an outsider's perspective of what they're doing and where it, like the possible future implementation. I could definitely see it when put into that context of like how cool it is. And it is, yeah, I don't know, it feels pretty powerful. Just like I'm still bewildered by the scrolling pre-prod Cardano node that I run on my computer. Like this, I'm like, oh my God. And especially to play a little game where you're trying to keep your node up and running so that it gets screenshot, what do they call that? Snapshotted, and then you could, get an award. I mean, it's cool. It's really cool.
Yeah, I'm very close to having the actual blocks show up on this one. But
Yeah.
there was some little, like, oh, GraphQL works like that. Aha, very different. So
Right. Right. I'm about it.
Good. Should we keep going?
Keep it going.
Without taking the
That's a great
screen
demo.
share back on my end, I've got Nelson next on the agenda with a fun project idea. Speaking of cliffhangers, what you got?
All right. I am not going to take up much time. So probably this is just selling UTXO-RPC for like 5-10 minutes maybe. But last week on Cardano Go, all things, I forgot what's the name of that live session. We tried to query query some information protocol params from an UTXO-RPC endpoint. And we basically tried to write a client using the UTXO-RPC Go SDK. And it took a couple of, it took some amount of time, right? And that's one of the ideas, that's one of the places from where this idea came up. But the other part is Martin has been advocating for people to be able to use their own backend to, query information or do, Cardano related things by changing which backend they use, either it's locally or their own URL or hosted by someone else. And the nice thing about UTXO-RPC is that a couple of teams are building different servers. For example, Dolos, Dingo, Cardano Node API. We have Demeter, which is a hosted Dolos. So we have these different servers, but they all provide the UTXO-RPC endpoint from which you can query stuff or submit transaction or do all sort of stuff. So my thought was why we can have a fun front end where we can test UTXO-RPC functionalities that easily by just changing the URL, right? Basically. So during the last meeting, while you guys were talking about Asteria, I'm sorry that I wasn't 100% on listening mode of that one, but I was listening in the background, but I was also writing a little bit of code of what can be of this project that I was thinking about. All right. So I wrote this small code that's basically just a Next.js project starter template, and I just I just made a little bit of changes in the index. That's it. So all right, I am running it here, but I'll start again. So I'll go through what I have done here, but literally nothing almost. So idea is that right now I have just set default to localhost, and I can write a port and then do read params. Let's actually go through the code first to get a little bit of understanding of what I'm talking about here. So this is a Next.js project I just initiated using npx, init Next.js, whatever. And then this is the default page app router, and then page. And then I just changed a couple of buttons, and when I click that button, I made it to do this thing. Right? What is this thing? This is the UTXO-RPC Node SDK. I installed it, and then I queried the I called the query client and then read the parameters from that server that I'm running on whichever port I'm providing. And then I'm just console logging the param. So this is it. In my Docker, I'm running a Dolos instance, and I provided the port 50051. So that's running. You can see the log there. So if I just do that, and actually I'm just using console log because I haven't done anything else. So when I do this, it will come up here. So yeah, this is what we tried to achieve in the Go session to, query the protocol parameters from UTXO-RPC server. And yeah, I think basically that's it, right? This is how we do things. So yeah, for the state of UTXO-RPC, I think UTXO-RPC is in very early development phase, so no one is going to recommend it to you right now to use it in production. It is very, very early. But what's the good thing about that? It's completely being built in public, in open source, and it's just getting started. And whether you're coming from, Node background, TypeScript, JavaScript, we're coming from, I don't know, Rust, you're coming from .NET, you're coming from Python, Haskell, Go, you can contribute to these things. And if you're enthusiast about contributing to open source, learning a little bit of how to use UTXO-RPC, endpoints will make you just able to contribute to these things, either one, any one of them, because a lot of things are just getting started and a lot of things need to be done. And yeah, a couple of only, I don't know, 5, 6 people are working on this, and it's all open source. So it's really easy to contribute. And I think it's a nice point to start open source contribution if you haven't done it, if you are curious about how to use this a little bit. So yes, that's probably it. But to give you a little idea of what it's capable of, like I have shown you this, but what comes next, we can display it in all sort of matter, right? Like that's the front end stuff. But this is simply read params. It does other things more than read params. You can query a lot of information. You can query tip. You can query, yeah, this is basically params. You can read UTXOs. You can read transactions. It isn't yet, but I'm pushing them to support this. That's querying, like indexing the blockchain, but you can also submit transactions. Or you can sync databases from, fully sync one to other things. You can watch. Watch is basically just waiting for things to happen. Like you want to see a transaction go through, your may go to, the whole blockchain. So it supports a whole lot of things, and we can easily access those endpoints by simply, creating those functionalities in the front end, right? Easily. And then you can hook up to any one of the ports that you have available locally, but also like you can see that you can literally change this and you can use a real URL also. So I did this last meeting while you guys were discussing Asteria. So nothing really, just change the button, just wrote this function. That's all I did. It's here, but we can build up other features if people are interested. We can talk about this. We can do all sort of stuff if we want. So yeah, I'll leave it there for now. Next.
I'm sorry, maybe I missed that. Which UTXO-RPC provider are you using? Dingo or Dolos? Or
I am using Dolos at the moment.
Dolos. Okay.
Pre-prod. It's running in pre-prod. But it would be the same with the other ones, right?
Yeah, but because if you remember, we got some errors for Dingo. I thought that maybe they fixed it or something, and that you are using Dingo. But great.
If people are interested in the Go side of things, then I think fixing that issue would not be as hard as it would seem. Because just understanding how it works, it's really easy to get those stuff. You just have to pass it to the UTXO-RPC endpoint, and a lot of stuff are already done. You just have to write a couple of code. So I think it's a great starting point for contribution to this project.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And one question, do you think Dolos or the whole UTXO-RPC is in the state that we can start substituting the old blockchain explorer provider with UTXO-RPC, like Blockfrost, Maestro, or whatever? Or no, still there are things needs to be done.
Yeah, the answer is no.
No, okay.
These are in their infancy. A lot of things are not working properly, to be honest. Yeah.
I see. Okay. So by fun, you meant this exactly. All these errors and figuring out. I got your point. Thank you.
So to get an idea of the timeline when we might be able to use UTXO-RPC in production, they have to get this thing working to the MVP stage when Amaru can produce blocks, right? So before Amaru gets to produce blocks, they have to make sure UTXO-RPC is working because they are relying a lot of stuff there. So that's the timeline. Amaru is the new REST node.
Nelson, sorry, I had a question, and I think you've actually just answered it there. It was just to follow on from what Mix was saying. So the end goal is to be able to replace the likes of Blockfrost, Maestro. That's the that's where you're going.
Yeah, the idea is that those indexers have different schemas and different, like, those things are fragmented, right? How you use Blockfrost is different than how you use Maestro, right?
Yeah.
So this UTXO-RPC, these people are trying to create a standard that everyone can use. Everyone can feed their data in their own way. But what comes out of the UTXO-RPC server endpoint is that the schema gets to be the same. So the users can use different backends. For example, what I just said, right? We can use Dolos written in Rust. We can use Dingo written in Go. But they're going to be computing a lot of things differently. But in the UTXO-RPC endpoint, we're going to be receiving the same thing over and over again. So you don't have to rely on the Blockfrost team to fix this. You don't have to rely on the Maestro team to fix this. You can use any one of the servers that's providing an UTXO-RPC endpoint, and that can substitute your whole project. So if something gets wrong, you can shift to the other server.
Right, I really like the sound of that. Is it a private repo at the moment?
No, it's completely open source.
Brilliant. Okay, I'll check that out. Thanks.
Yeah, but the fun project idea is that if we want, we can add a little bit to this front end where we can try the functionality of things, and we can also learn how we get data from there.
And that part sounds like a really good tool to use in any course.
Yeah.
Here's a playground for learning how this tool works. That's really cool. Any other questions for Nelson?
Is that the right link? in the
Yes,
that I put in the chat?
yes.
Okay, cool.
Great.
Excellent. Perfect.
Thanks, partner. All right, checking the agenda next. I have a little demo. Yeah, so give me just a second here. So I'm going to share just Notion for just a second to show people where this is. Because I'm playing with the concept of like a request for proposals. And what I have in mind is I know that the PPBL maintainers work has been really successful. The Asteria project is humming along. And some people might be looking for other projects like those, or we recognize that those projects are going to end soon enough, and people might be looking for something else to do. So I have something that I got curious about. And if I go back to the RFP right here, all that I put in this document is a link to the original blog post, and then I'll drop a link to this timestamped video demo that I'm about to give. But there's a blog post right here, and I'm going to open up a browser now. Here's the link to it in the chat. And maybe some people have seen this blog post. I know that Harsha has been playing around with vibe coding. So this is a guy who's kind of a proponent of vibe coding, and he coined this term vice framework, and the V stands for vibe. So just to put our eyes on this blog post for just a second, here's what it looks like. And you could read through this on your own. Basically, what he describes is this idea he has for setting priorities, and he describes that he built it for himself using vibe coding. So I was like, well, geez, that sounds fun. So Sunday afternoon, my family, we were all sitting around, we were listening to music and just all doing our own things. And I threw together a quick little prototype just to see if this was possible. So it's a vibe check app. Here it is. And what it does is it first pulls in the projects from the Notion project board that we're already familiar with. And then rather than telling you what it does, let me just show you. So here's the list of projects. And this is just a raw pull. Okay. This is an unfiltered pull of all of the projects in the Gimbalabs project database. It's the title and it's the Notion ID. It would be easy to turn these into links. I didn't even bother doing that. And there's a lot of old stuff on here, so maybe I don't want to include all of this. So for the purposes of this demo, let me just grab a few of these. And you can see when I initialize them, they get a vibe score, right? And these are, I'm just grabbing things I know are like kind of live right now. Deliver. Not trying to think too hard right here. I just want like a set of these to be on the list. Hackathon could be fun. All right, we'll call that good enough for now. Obviously, there's a lot more I could add. And so once these are added, they get dropped into a database. And here's what happens. We have a vibe session. There's not even a link for this yet. And so when I start a vibe session, I can add my name and I get issued a copy of the list of those projects that I just identified. And what I'm going to do is start a session. Now, there's nothing to this UI right here. I made no UI decisions. I was vibe coding. I was just grabbing what I could build as quickly as possible. So I'm going to set a pair of random tasks. This UI needs a question right here. There should be like a heading. And the question is something like, which one of these is a higher priority right now? So of these two projects, which one is a higher priority for me personally right now? And you can imagine if several people did this, they would each generate a different data set based on their responses. And imagine doing this before a governance meeting. Imagine doing this at any scale where a lot of people have to set priorities between competing projects that probably are all important. and that everybody has opinions about. What if this was a first step as a tool in governance? We each took a few minutes to quietly go through, okay, which one of these is more important to me? Which one of these do I think is more of a priority right now? Well, we just finished that one and we said we were going to ignore it, so I'll choose this one for now. After I do that, the next choice comes up. Oh shit, this is a hard one. Sustain and maintain F13 they're both current. They're both happening. I know that this one feels to me like we've got it under control, so I'm going to say that one's more of a priority. You see how this thing forces me to make hard decisions, but in most times I wouldn't be sharing my decision logic out loud. I would just be thinking these thoughts inside my head. All right, so you can see, let me just keep going for a little while. Which one of these is more important in these pairwise comparisons? Ooh, yeah, that's tough. All right. But you can see how it starts to get kind of interesting when you move through this quickly. And in any case, after a certain amount of time, right, we could keep score. We could count how many decisions I've made. We could force a vibe session to extend for at least, say, 25 checks or until every project is assessed. But at the end of it all, I'm going to refresh this page just to refresh the data. This is just a prototype. At the end of it all, I can now sort by the current vibe. It was keeping score in the background every time I chose or didn't choose one in a pair. Each of those was incremented and decremented by a certain amount. And you can see that without even thinking about what my ranked list of priorities was at a high level, I created one emergently just by engaging in this process. And back to that note from a few minutes ago, what if 8 or 10 or 15 or 25 people all did this process before a governance meeting and were able to look at a dashboard of the results of all of their vibe sessions? Now, that part's not built. This is just a very simple prototype, but this is where the call to action comes in. This is something that I would really like to continue to explore. And the reason I'm sharing it with you today is that I don't have time to really dig into this right now. And I'm not assuming anybody else does. But if anybody's interested in picking up some of these concepts, continuing to build this app, thinking about it in relation to governance, all of the governance conversations we are already having, but also perhaps in relation to tokenomics. I can imagine this being a component of some innovative tokenomics and governance schemes. So just wanted to throw this out there. And if anybody is interested, just know that there's a blank proposal that I would love to pick up with anybody who's interested in the future. So that's pretty much all for that. But yeah, does anybody have any questions?
Just an idea would be fun to have that in a Hydra head to do the vibe
Oh,
check.
can you imagine? Right? Oh, you see, so that's to flesh out the proposal. There's an example, right? Like, hey, let's build vibe check on a Hydra head would be a damn satisfying proposal to take on. What else are people thinking?
How is this actually coded?
Yeah, where's the link? Can you show us the
I
the
didn't
the
I didn't even have time to push it yet. Here, but we can go into the source code. I'll show you. We'll do a quick tour.
there you go.
You know the way to my heart, Andrew. Yeah, I would love to do some show and tell.
And I do love it that you're just like, yeah, we were just doing a little thing and bang, bang, boom, you know. Uh,
Well, this
Nelson's like, well, while you guys are doing something, I wasn't paying full attention, but I whipped this up.
yeah. The vibe coding is real. It is a good idea to explore. Okay. So I'm in my code base. It's just a T3 app, just like the Asteria thing you guys are focused on, just like on Damio. I want to be able potentially in the future to integrate this in on Damio. So I wanted to build on the same stack. So we do have a very simple database, and you can see I'm just running it on SQLite for now. For anybody who's not aware, what this means is I didn't have to spin up a database anywhere else. SQLite, which is specified here in my Prisma file, right, it just makes a document. So all of the data I just created by giving you that demo is in an SQLite file right here on my computer, right? I could easily move this to production, but the first thing I would have to do is create a database somewhere in the cloud and hook it up to here. What's in this database? Well, there's three tables. There's a table of Notion tasks, of vibe sessions, and of session tasks. This Notion task table is populated when I press those add buttons. So the first screen I showed you was just the raw dump of projects from the Gimbalabs Notion. And for now, the UI just says, hey, click the add button. And when you do, those tasks will be created in the database. It's going to pull in the title from Notion. It's going to assign it a default vibe score, and it's going to initialize a relationship between session tasks. More on those in just a minute. There's no user database. There's no authentication here. When somebody creates a vibe session, they just write their name in a form. This is only saved as a session. You're not creating an account yet. That would all be for the future, right? And if people were interested in taking this thing further, we would want to build authentication and a user table. We have none of that right now. So what's a vibe session? It's just an identifier for who created a copy of the list of tasks. And that's what we have right here. A session task is just a copy of a Notion task or a link to a Notion task with a little more information on it. It has a starting vibe score, a session vibe score, and then it's keeping track. Okay, so you can see a session task has a relationship to a Notion task. And then a vibe session is just one user taking all of those session tasks and operating on them. So that's the data structure right here. Any questions about this setup? I'll show you the logic in just a second, but that's the basic setup. Okay. So now let's go back in. I just wanted to be able to look at the file hierarchy again. So now in the source directory, we've got a lot of the typical stuff, right? This is actually a next app router this time, so it's going to look a little different from the pages router, if that's what you're familiar with. We have TRPC. So on the server, for example, nope, that's not helpful to us. We can look at the query client. This is the one that's basically taking the Notion data and just initially processing it for us, but that's not that interesting either. Where's the interesting logic? Is it read? Where did I encode this stuff? I might have kept that simple. Maybe I'm not using that too much yet. Yeah, I kept it really simple. Did not go far. Not even that. I'm just trying to look for something interesting to show you about the logic, but I did this so quickly. All right, but really what I'm looking for is I want to show you where the actual
Here we go.
is happening. Types, loop, utils, no.
It wouldn't be in a component, like a compare component,
Yeah,
or
it would be. I'm trying to remember where I put that logic. So here's the vibe set.
oh, here we go.
I guess that's it. Yeah. Um, so we have, yeah, I can look from here. So, oh, that's it. There's a use session task hook. So right here's the component where I have it's choosing randomly two tasks from the list. It doesn't allow us to pit a task against itself, right? So it
Right.
chooses the first one randomly, it chooses another one randomly, and then just make sure it's not a duplicate. Good. Now we have those. When you have the vibe session open, it puts each of those divs side by side with a button in it, right? The button just says this one or this one? And then it calls update session vibe. That's really where the logic is. Okay, so update session vibe in this use session task hook. This is where we're going to find the good stuff. Oh, session task was the router I was looking for. Okay, so this is just a hook wrapping a TRPC endpoint. And this is something we could go deeper into anytime, but just for now, I'm gonna either assume you understand this already because you've been working with it, and if you don't, we'll follow up on it later because I'm trying to get to the business logic here, right? And so here's the real logic. Update session vibe score. It takes task A, task B, and your selection. This is like a Sunday afternoon decision right here. Maybe you can already see the better way to do this would just be to take like the winning task as the first input and the losing task as the second. Why am I taking task A and B and then which one I choose? That's just bad code, but it works, right? There's efficiencies you think about. Uh, and so what do we do? Well, we grab the first task from the database and we grab the second task from the database. And then we say, well, depending on which one you took, we're going to calculate a vibe score adjustment. And this is important right here. Okay, so I'm going to come back to that in just a second. Whatever that vibe score adjustment is, we're going to update the score by that amount for task A. We're going to update it by that amount for task B, and then we're going to increment the count, the number of times this task has been checked against. Okay. And so finally here, this is the fun part, calculate vibe score adjustment. It's a helper function that pulls in some config up above, and you could have a bonanza calculating the business logic here. Okay, this is just a starting point. So look what I said. Let's make like different thresholds for different amounts. So for example, if one project already has a very high score and another project already has a very low score, we would expect the one with the high score to win, kind of like in chess ratings. And this is exactly what it says in the blog post that I shared at the start of this demo. If the favored outcome, the one that already has a high score wins, it shouldn't get that many points. But if the underdog wins, the one with a lower score wins, well, it should be rewarded more points proportionally. And the one that was the favorite should be knocked down greater, right? So we have just different thresholds here. And this gives us a place to start playing around with the actual scoring algorithm, adjusting it in a way that it gives us the most interesting information. Okay. All this does is it basically goes at increments of 25, and then it increments by these amounts, right? Right. Adjustment amount for a large difference, adjustment amount for a small difference. These are the adjustment amounts for if the underdog, right, the lower rated option is selected, you would get even more points. And then once you have those amounts, whether you're adding and subtracting 25, 50, 75, or 100 from each, you're going to add and subtract that amount from the existing amounts. So that's really the core logic right there. Yeah, put two things side by side. If they're about equal already, you're gonna add and subtract 50 to each one. And if there's bigger or smaller differences, we update that accordingly. Andrew, are there other parts of the stack that would be helpful to highlight here?
No, I like using the app router. I like that. No, yeah, I understand what you're doing. It's nice.
Anybody else have questions or just initial thoughts? Does this get you going in any way or another?
Uh, yeah. I love the scalability of it. Um, it and the game like nature. Um, Ratio, Scott and I were talking about like, you know, we're a community of builders and developers, like governance and establishing priorities. It's like it seems like a heavy lift because of, like it's just not, but doing something like this is just like, oh yeah. And I guess this is sort of like Polis, where it's just like a little game that you can play so that we can distribute that workload um, to the community. Um, so I like it as something that could be very useful, but then also as just like a kind of like just a click game, just you're clicking on stuff, Uh, yeah, yeah. And it gets into sort of a core game mechanic, which is making decisions. And sometimes the decisions are pretty easy, light, and then you're like, oh crap. Well, and if you take it seriously, it can it can trigger that part of the brain, which is so fun, you know. Yeah, it's good.
And that part's so important to me, right? Like obviously like looking at the data after any number of ad sessions, I do think there's value in that. But that key thing, right? You're warming up your brain. It's like stretching before exercise, right?
Yeah,
If you take this seriously, if you have a group of people all taking it seriously, well, everybody has this experience already. They're not coming in cold to governance. Their brain is primed for governance. Okay, I just had to work through some hard outcomes in my own head, and some things were easy. I realized what my priorities were. And then, yeah, I did have this one experience when these two things were side by side, and that made me realize, whoo, that's a dilemma right there. And right
yeah,
now, I'm that much more excited to maybe hear what other people think.
yeah. I that stated that way, like stretching before exercise, like coming in cold to governance, like, and it, uh, yeah. If everybody's just sort of like coming in cold and not realizing they're not in that part of the brain where like hard decisions where you have to really uh be careful with yourself or gentle with yourself. It's like, well, that was a tough decision, as opposed to how in the world, like I think it could cut down on the polarization possibly, where you're like, oh no, these are hard decisions, and I just made some, so I'm sympathizing with uh yeah, yeah. And this is at our highest level, doing the doing those habits, like figuring out good habits for governance and building some foundational mental models and structure to kind of get people involved with civics. And we can do it with these tools. I mean, this is hot or not. This is hot or not. And this is the basis for,
Right.
the algorithm,
Forgot about that.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Well, yeah, it's hot or not with ideas, which Eleanor Roosevelt would be proud of. Yeah.
There you go.
Uh, Cool. Well, so I'm going to leave that one out there. Like I said, this is not something I can afford to spend too much time on, but it's fun, and that's the other thing I have to report. I needed a break from like day-to-day work, but I just felt like hacking on something, and it was a fun experience to be like, I have a couple hours on a Sunday afternoon, and I was like laughing out loud. I was like, this is so fun. So it's there. If anybody wants to pick that up or have a conversation about it in the future, let me know. As I have time for it, it's certainly something that I'll be carving out space for when it's available. Yeah, so thanks for the chance to make that demo.
Yeah, yeah. And this is something that, in my mind, a community of builders, like one, just just doing the demos. Like I now know like what Martin and what Nelson are into and what they and you like when you have some time where you don't want to work on something quote unquote serious or what you can do in the background. If I'm a junior developer, if I'm trying to figure out how to contribute in any way, like front end or back end or with infrastructure or this or that, I think I think that is super important for people to see. And then it's just like, oh yeah, it's just yeah. So I'm happy for the process and for the individual projects. I think that's super cool.
Thanks, Newman. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think this could be a compelling product to build, especially in this era of governance. And right, it's familiar enough and it's interesting. Fun.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Who knows? Who knows what where these things come from?
Right.
Yeah.
Going back to the agenda, we've checked a few things off so far. Officially, that one just happened. And so now next we've got handling UTXOs. Harsha, can I pass it to you?
Yeah, so it's both me and Newman because we worked on it together. So
We worked a little yesterday on it. Yeah, yeah.
uh,
But
well,
it's an Asteria project. Sort of this came out of Asteria, um, and it solved. So I mean, not to take your, but as Harsha gets set up, he basically was solving the problem that he had, and he's just like, okay, I've got this vibe coding, and I think he wanted to try out some of this stuff, and he's like, oh, I think I can do this with the the AIs, and then he developed this.
yeah. So I'll just give some like initial information on what we are trying to do. So we have to create UTXOs in a validator address for the pellet validator. And each of the UTXOs has inline datum, and the inline datum has an X coordinate, a Y coordinate, and the policy ID of something called the shipyard. And it also has tokens. There's a fuel token in each of the UTXOs, and there is a admin token in each of the UTXOs. The fuel token is derived from the script, the hashing the script, the pellet validator script, and there are about 120 UTXOs that we had to like put into the validator address. So we wanted to create like a front end so that we can like do it in en masse, so that we can send 8 transactions at a time instead of creating like one transaction through CLI and all of that. And also it's really hard in CLI to send so many transactions. So that's the basic information. And Newman, do you want to talk about how we went about this? So I can also give you like a quick run through of like the UI. So you basically connect your browser wallet here, uh, and you put in your validator address here and the batch size of 8. I think it is a safe batch size. I know there is a maximum size of 1 MB for a transaction with sub transactions in it. So I'm not sure about this number. I just thought it was a safe number. And we can put in the admin token policy ID, token name, fuel token policy ID, token name, the shipyard policy. And there is something also called price tokens, which is like a random like token. The policy ID is not necessarily derived from any script. So you can put those as well. And then you create like a CSV. And there are two helper functions for it, like a ring function and a diamond function. So it just creates random X and Y coordinates based on these functions. One is in the form of a circle, other is obviously in the form of a ring or in the form of a diamond. And once you generate this, you'll have a CSV. You can download the CSV, put it back in here, put it back into this guy, and then you can deploy the pellets and start signing transactions. There'll be a bunch of transactions because we have a number 8 and we have a total of 120 UTXOs. So that's where we are at. Newman,
Yeah.
up to you.
Yeah, well, no, I think you described it. We could go into the code to sort of show the back end of it, and then you can actually see our chats with the AI to sort of figure it out. I'm trying to think of what we came like what our challenges were, but it is
I
something
can
that
speak on the challenges a little bit. So this is like version 2 of this UI. The initial version was a little, it wasn't that great because I did not understand uh, exactly how everything worked. Where did I put it? So is this the right one? Yeah. So the
Yeah, so this
initial,
is the Discord of our Asteria game, app Discord channel. And so we've just been putting updates and things in here.
yeah, so this was the initial version, but this was wrong. This just was adding inline datum. But the reason I was saying theory becomes extremely important in the age of vibe coding is because when I didn't know anything, the AI did something, but I did not have any way to verify. I did not understand it, and it was wrong. So once I understood how things work and I spoke to the AI about it, I think it did a much, much better job. So I am under the impression that like if you understand the theory, the output can be like really good.
And
Here,
I
here.
will
Well
jump.
said.
Yes, yes. And I'll jump in because I think the way that Harsha understood the theory was explaining it to me and sort of took on the instructor role. And as we walk through it, I think that Harsha, would you agree that you got to have a more clear understanding of what was going on?
Yeah, yeah. We created this document here
Oh, that's right.
to
Yeah.
understand it
Newman,
better.
did you just say that like there's a new market for people to play the fool in an age of AI?
Yes, well, I don't know if that was, but yeah, exactly. I do think that if I think there's a market for as you're learning to it's kind of like rubber ducking, because I could just stay there and let him explain it and ask the questions, and the less I knew, the more I gave him clear air to just go through it, which is good. Yeah, yeah. Just that play the fool, be the just talk to the chair type of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, so currently we don't have any blockers for this, but we'll be trying this out. Like I currently I'm on a different laptop, but I'll go back and I'll try this out and see the results, and I'll report back next week.
And hey, Harsha, do you think that we would create front ends to like for this is deploy the pellet UTXOs? Would we also have something like there's two other UTXOs that we've got to do. The
The
ship
Asteria
state,
UTXO.
yeah, Asteria, and there's
By
another
the
one.
end of the day, I think we'll have to create front end to play the game itself. So it
Yeah,
wouldn't be too different, I think.
yeah, exactly, exactly.
And
And
admin dashboards are a key part of any app, right? You basically have a prototype of an admin dashboard that you can build on as you also move towards other people playing this game.
Correct. Yes.
yeah,
It's very cool.
yeah. And
So,
that's basic. Yeah, that's basically what we did was we sort of took the design document and they've got a pretty good representation of it. Um, and as I look at it now, it looks like ship state has got a couple of different, things. So yeah, that we definitely would want to not do it by hand. It's not going to be like 150 transactions or tokens and stuff, but I definitely think that the like the front end, and that's what we're building, that's what we're building. Is this, what is it? Could you show us the code again? Like, because we were just letting the AI, or what is it built with? Is it
It is
in the,
just Mesh and Next.js.
oh, yes. Show them that. Because I was like, okay, which frameworks are you using? Like what components? I was like, wait a minute, where are your imports? No, the AI
Like
built
the
it all in vanilla. So it didn't use any stuff. It's just all vanilla. It's like,
Oh, so yeah.
why do I need a
Initially,
framework?
when I did ask it to build it, uh, with Mesh, it wasn't actually like building it with Mesh. It was creating its own like wallet connection thing from like ground up and stuff. So I had to like retell it to use Mesh and like all of that. And I had to use the agent here. The agent has web access as well, so it can go and read Mesh documents and all of that. So that was really helpful. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's
yeah, it
really
was fun.
Like, are the transactions also written by the AI? Like, are transactions
Yes.
even?
Yes, yes. Pretty much everything was done by the AI. We just had to make sure like we were telling it the right things.
Right. So
Can you show the code for transaction part just to.
Well, I will have to see where that is. Let's see.
Yes. Well, it's funny because now it rolls us into those theory. It's like my grandfather used to say about getting a four-wheel drive truck. He's just like, you're going to get stuck still, but you'll just get stuck farther back in the woods.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Yep.
Here you go.
When it comes to Olive Garden's oven-baked pastas, we go a little over the top, like meatballs, Italian sausage, and pepperoni.
And then
All
you
right.
guys, as we're looking at this, I know Adrian, for example, has done more thinking than anybody I know about how you make efficient systems for deploying sets of contracts. Adrian, does this raise any questions for you?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting way to do it. I did mostly everything with Haskell, but I think, yeah, you have to think it another way with Aiken.
So Harsha, when you test this, what is your expectation when you click the deploy? Like, are you going to sign a series of transactions or?
Yeah, so once I deploy, I just have to sign the transactions and they get deployed. The old one, which was wrong, still like, it kind of like worked. Where's this? So this guy, but it only has inline data. So I just signed these transactions and I checked the inline datum and it had inline datum. It's just, this is not like the right information, but yeah, so X coordinate, Y coordinate, and some field stuff.
What do you got there, Larry? Time machine?
Yeah.
Go back and see how the pyramids were built or something? Nope.
And you said the number of output UTXOs you want cannot be fit in one transaction, right?
Only room for one.
Yes. So there is a maximum of 8 transactions per transaction, which I can set, by the way.
So you're going to be
Money moves aren't as far-fetched as you think. There it is.
you're going to be signing a couple of transactions when you like the expectation is you're not going to be just signing one transaction, right?
Yes. I'll be signing about 10 maybe 15 transactions, which is better than 150 transactions, I thought.
Are you doing any transaction chaining? Because like you'll
I
be
have no
using
idea what transaction chaining is, so you'll have to explain.
So when you do the first transaction, you're
Uh-huh.
going to be utilizing some of the, let's say you have a UTXO with 100 data, right?
Uh-huh.
You're probably going to be using that UTXOs in the first transaction. So
Correct. Uh-huh.
that UTXO will be gone for the second transaction. But if you had already pre-built the second transaction, that will no longer be valid because the UTXO says.
Oh, that's actually interesting because I didn't think of that. Like, I don't know if it is pre-building or not because I didn't face any issues with sending transactions. But I will have to test it.
Yeah, how could we tell?
Yeah, I mean, like if it fails, then we would know that it is doing that. But right now, I have no idea. I didn't even look at the code, to be fair.
Researchers believe eyewitness accounts handed down over time in myths and religious texts.
It is spitting out.
They say such chronicles.
I mean, it's not throwing any errors, but is it have we looked at those that pellet state UTXO? Can we? Yeah, I think we did that. Did we do that?
So
Just
we
query
only
it?
yeah. Mm-hmm. So we only created the CSV. We'll have to like try it out again with the exact tokens.
Okay.
We'll see. So yeah, the CSV worked out. The CSV. Where is this?
Yeah. And they have a example CSV in the Asteria code base, and so it looked like that. So,
yeah, 1 second. Let me open the CSV.
Pellet CSV. I just saw it.
Yeah, pellet CSV.
There it is. Yep.
So it has fuel, position X, position Y, and shipyard policy, which we provided yesterday, and the CSV seems to be right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, so once we test it out this week, we'll have
Oh,
our
so
answers one way or the other. Yeah.
so I see you are like doing it, like one transaction at a time, and after you submitted it, you do the next one. Right.
Yeah, that's my understanding of it.
Okay, so you are not, yeah. Okay, I see.
A shocking number of UFOs were sighted high above the mosque.
So yeah, at least you are
that the city itself is
doing it in
significant
multiple
to
manual
UFOs and
steps.
extraterrestrials.
Yes,
I thought
yes.
you were going to just click that button and you expect everything to be, completely done.
No. So I'll have to click it multiple times, like 10, 15 times. Yeah.
Right, yeah. Okay, I understand now.
Yeah.
But can we talk about that concept of chaining for just a second? Because this is one of those breakthrough concepts, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Right. So as you know, and as you're working on, you click that button because you have the UTXOs that you're going to spend. And often those are from a transaction that just happened, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's why we can't do everything all at once. But keep in mind that when you build a transaction, you do the build step and the sign step. Before you even have the submit step complete, the TX hash has actually already been generated.
Correct.
Right? And so you know what the on-chain UTXO ref is going to be of the UTXO you're going to spend, even though it doesn't actually exist on chain yet.
Correct. Yeah.
And that's what enables the chaining that Nelson's talking about.
Oh, okay.
That idea still blows my mind. Right? Like,
Yeah.
but that's the idea that makes it possible to build a system where you don't have to press that button 15 times, and you can decide, is that a priority? Maybe not, right? But it's possible.
The cobblestone itself is really fascinating because Muslims
Yeah.
believe in energized.
I just did a search and there's a muesli swap catalyst proposal in fund 10 that they did something with this, but not much is out there about it, about transaction chaining. Where would that in our courses, would that show up anywhere, and would that be?
It's such a good question. So we don't yet have it in course material. And part of the reason is that like the number of non-Cardano prereqs, this is like just over the line. So like, as you
Right.
know, we do a lot of React teaching just to get people to be able to play around with an app so that they can understand this mesh library, start building a few things, right? And so if there's a line, like how much backfilling do we want to do? It's kind of like React is just on the inside of that line, but all the stuff that you would need to really build robust transaction chaining systems, for example, is just a little bit beyond the scope of what we've taken on so far. That doesn't mean we can't, right? It's just a matter of like showing like, hey, what's the best way we could teach this, given that there might be a couple of concepts that are brand new to people.
I dig it. Yep.
Daniel, what do you think?
Yeah, on the transaction chaining concept, I saw in one of these explanation on Mesh Discord that his own idea about transaction chaining is using the hash of the previous transaction in signing the next transaction and going on like that. And I don't know if it's relating to what you just explained, and how does that concept is just I don't know, but so yeah, is that actually what transaction chaining is, or but that's a very different concept, or is that even possible? I don't know.
Mm.
Yeah, it's possible to use a variety of validators to validate for each other. So if you wanted to create something that like gave the end user the feel of one transaction signing the next, like that would be possible to design. What I'm describing actually, it goes a step further. It's just you signing, right? If Harsh is pressing the button 15 times, he's signing 15 times. Um, but because we are able to get the transaction hash of any transaction, even if it's not on chain yet, it follows that we can pre-build all of these transactions. You can have all of them built and valid to go on chain, right? It's just that you can't try to submit them before the expected UTXOs exist. So it's still just you signing. Probably the hardest non-Cardano part is scheduling, right? Like how does whatever you build know when to fire the next one? How is it watching the chain, that kind of thing. Um, yeah, this is cool. This is something that we can sink our teeth into over time. And what you've done, Harsha, is build a space to explore this idea. That's really cool.
I
Nice.
I did a search on Discord on the Mesh.js Discord server, and there was a do we know El Laurito? Yeah. Anyway, some of these posters are
Uh,
familiar.
Raul is
But
right. He's one of our best theoreticians in the Cardano
yeah.
ecosystem, and he has a track record of putting ideas into practice. He's also he's the one who like first was able to describe and create a prototype of the Bitcoin bridge.
Hmm. Okay. I don't know how I can save this. Can I save this?
Uh,
A link to this? I don't know. Anyway, but I'll figure.
yep.
Uh,
But well,
okay.
and this is great. So like as even as research continues, one thing that's happening coming out of this conversation is we already have a few ideas that we might cover in the future. So as a way of closing
Right.
out, and I know we're at time.
Oh yeah. Oh geez.
I'll pull this up one more time, right? This is the link on the Notion. If you have an idea, right? We've done this before at Playground. This kind of looks like the original Playground chart. So now we have it for Dev Standup, and anybody who has access to the Notion anytime during the week, feel free. Just add a few more rows right here. Add your ideas. We'll set the agenda at the start of each session. We'll drag things up and down. We'll just keep like pushing Mix off into the future like this, and hopefully he doesn't
Oh sorry.
notice. And yeah, we'll take it from there. But thanks. I'm excited about where this session is headed. This feels good, everybody. So thanks.
Yeah, really does. Thanks. Thanks,
All
y'all.
right.
Enjoy. We'll
Till
see you
next
next
time.
time.
Thanks for a good day.
Thank
Bye.
you, everyone.
Yeah.
Bye. Ciao.